there's definitely like a heart and a hunger to it. I don't want to make it sound like I'm trying to present it as some sort of Rocky movie, but but it is. You want it so bad that you're willing to take any amount to do it, or you don't. And I think that those people get weeded out pretty quickly.
All right, welcome to the Pats Distilled. I'm your host, Kevin Harris. My co-host is Lauren Tashman.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining us today.
And today we have actor, comedian, and host of the Daily Distraction at comicbook.com, Chris Killian. Chris, thank you so much for joining us.
What's going on, guys? I'm sorry for my disheveled appearance. I haven't had a haircut in months.
Well, I wonder why that would be, Chris.
Yeah, I have no idea. I don't think I've even left this room in at least a week.
Yeah, well, my excuse is I wear caps. So
there you go. I'm going to get into that soon. I have a mullet wig that I've been thinking about putting on just so I can blame it on something
change
else.
it up.
Yeah. Whatever. Be like, this is what it's going to look like under here just a few more weeks.
That's awesome. So, Chris, tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do.
Yeah, so I've been a stand-up comic for about 10 years now, though my stand-up comedy has kind of taken a backseat lately since about 3 years ago, I got an opportunity to work with a website called comicbook.com, and I provide video content for that, for them. And like you mentioned earlier, I host a show called Daily Distraction, which is kind of like Weekend Update for nerds or something. Like, it's a daily monologue that I wake up at like 4:30 in the morning and write it and film it. Lately, I have a studio in Nashville that we film out of, but I haven't been able to do that. So I have this green screen like you said, where the magic happens. So we film that every day, and then I film a few other odds and ends videos for them just to kind of keep content rolling and everything. And honestly, I'm very thankful considering everything that's going on right now. If I was only doing stand-up comedy, I've got a lot of friends that, they're in a lot of trouble right now, to be honest, so I'm very grateful that I have something else to keep me occupied in the meantime.
Well, sure.
So this has been good.
Well, thank you. So when and how did you first get involved in comedy?
Kind of by fluke accident, honestly. I was a professional wrestler for a few years. Nobody, when I say that, they just laugh. No, it's true. I had this huge dream of being a professional wrestler, but I'm like 5'6", so impossible. But I did it, and I did it for a few years. Actually, I broke my back doing it.
Oh, wow.
Which then I was like, you know what? Maybe I should use my brain for some stuff. So I started going to Austin P when I was 20. I ended up getting my bachelor's in English there, and then I started working on my master's, and I was helping teach like freshman English and stuff like that, and just on a whim. I've always been a very creative-minded person, and I just got bored, and so I went and did. I started playing guitar in college and writing some funny songs, and Lana Turner, who was the wife of Ralphie May, I don't know if you remember him. She was having like a musician's night at Zany's. So I MySpace messaged her just to give you guys a hint of how long ago this was. So I sent her a MySpace message. I think this was around 2009. And I just was like, hey, I write some funny songs. Can I come up on your show? And she was like, yeah, come on. And so I think she gave me like 5 or 6 minutes. And I'd been writing stand up meticulously for like 4 months, and I had these dumb songs to play. And I think I invited everybody I knew out to Zany's. So it was just, I don't know. It couldn't have gone better. It was the best first set that anybody could ever have. And I'm fairly positive that's just because so many people were supporting me there. But Brian Dorfman, the owner of Zany's, happened to be there. And at the time, I didn't know how rare that was. But I was just chatting with this guy at the bar, for like 15 minutes, and I had no clue that he owned Zanies. And so he ended up asking me later on afterwards if I wanted to come back and MC.
Wow.
And so I was like, oh yeah, that'd be great. And had no clue how lucky I was for that. You know, just it was just pure luck on my instance, because I know open micers they've been doing it for years and years and years and can't get that kind of opportunity. And so I just really stepped in shit on that. So I don't know if I can say that on this, but
You can.
okay, sweet. But yeah, just a big pile of good luck shit. And and so and that's just that's how it kind of got rolling. I was MCing for a lot of huge names. Greg Giraldo was one of my favorite comedians. I got to open for him.
Wow.
And yeah, just I was opening for the the best comedians at the time, and in front of some prime audiences, and I think it helped me grow really quickly. And before I knew it, like other smaller clubs were asking me to feature for them, and I started traveling, and eventually it got to a point where Linda Barnes, I don't know if you know her at Austin P. She was like running the literature department there, and she was pretty much like, Chris, we all support your stand-up comedy, but you're gonna have to make a choice of whether you're gonna stay here and teach, or you're gonna pursue stand-up. And the way she tells it, and she's like, then I never saw him again. So that's pretty much how it happened. It was unexpected, but I'm grateful that it kind of took off that way.
What was it like that first time being on stage? What was going through your head?
Oh God. It was pretty nerve-wracking, but I've always been a little bit of a show-off, in the sense that, like, against my better judgment, I did talent shows when I was in middle school and high school, and talent shows when they were never the cool thing to do, but they were really not the cool thing to do. And I just pushed ahead and did it anyway. And then I did the pro wrestling thing. And I mean, once you've been in front of like hundreds of people in your underwear, you'd be surprised how easy everything else gets. And so I think that a lot of those experiences had kind of prepped me for stand-up. So even though, like, my first time doing stand-up, I think I took to it a lot better, just because I'd had so much time, years before that, in front of audiences in different capacities. So it's still nerve-wracking. I mean, don't get me wrong. It's like trying to make a bunch of strangers who've paid money laugh is one of the most, it's insane. It takes a special kind of person mentally, and by special, I mean like probably slightly crazy, to want to do something like that. But yeah, I took to it pretty well. I think I just had enough prior experience doing other things that it wasn't so bad for me.
Sure.
So in the time between Lana inviting you to do the show for her and the time you started getting the other gigs, is this something you're actively pursuing, or is this something that's just happening to you?
I've been interested in it for some time. I don't like being somebody who's ill-prepared. I find that I'm not a very good improv kind of person, which is why, like, maybe this isn't even coming off great, because I have no preparation for this whatsoever. So
it's all right. We'll help you through it.
But I just like I said, I spent months writing stand-up when I decided that I wanted to even try it. And just kind of waited for the right opportunity to do it. But even before that, I'd scoped out open mics before. I'd gone to like some local open mics in Nashville and had watched them perform, and kind of like built up the courage of like, oh, well, if these guys can do it and fail miserably like they are, then I can probably do it and fail and be okay as well. And so, yeah, I just spent a lot of time kind of, I think, secretly planning on doing this. I would guess at least a year. I'd probably like had it cooking in my brain that it was something that I wanted to try.
Okay. And what does writing look like at this time?
I bought a how-to how to write stand-up book, which just kind of taught me about punchlines and setups, and then Rick Roberts. I don't know if you know who Rick Roberts is.
I do.
He used to have like a little stand-up class that he offered at Zanies that I can't remember. I honestly think that I started taking the stand-up class after I started working at Zanies. I can't remember that it's a little muddied, but I think that I took it after I was already doing stand-up to try to get a little better. But it was like that. It was just writing down. I was writing songs, which helped pad a lot of time. So I was just writing some silly songs and writing just anything down that I thought was funny that I could turn into something, you know. So that's pretty much it. I collected, I don't know, probably 2 or 3 notebooks worth of just ideas, you know.
And are you one of the writers that will do it a certain amount of time per day, or did you just do it as it came to you?
No, I do it as it comes to me. There's definitely, I wish I was disciplined enough to sit down and write. I do that now for the Daily Distraction Show. Like I'm forced to like write every morning for that. But I find that it's more difficult when it's it's easier when I'm writing for somebody else, or I'm writing like with a specific, like in a specific parameter. But if I'm just like left to my own devices of like, what do I think is funny right now? And just try to write that, I'm no good. I'm terrible. So I definitely wait for the, what's the word I'm looking for? When you just have some sort of creative, you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Say what?
Spark or epiphany.
Yeah. Just that sort of epiphany of an idea. But when I'm into something, I find that I have very singular, like I have tunnel vision. So if I'm focused on something, I only think about that 24/7. So, you know, that's probably why for, 4 or 5 months, I was able to write so much stuff. It's all I was thinking about. And then, I'll get distracted doing something else and I won't write for months, so it kind of comes and goes based on my enthusiasm for it.
What was
Not something that I would suggest for most people wanting to pursue stand-up comedy. I would suggest more discipline.
Sure. Thank you.
What was it like? So you come to this fork in the road of, I'm either going to now kind of go back to, teaching and that kind of, potential path or journey, or choose this path that's maybe a little less known or kind of figured out. Well, tell us about that time point.
Well, it was interesting because I never wanted to be a teacher as much as teaching seemed like a safe fallback plan. Mm-hmm. I just didn't know what I wanted to do. I remember when I signed up to go to college, she was like, "What do you want to do?" And I was like, "What can I take the least amount of math?" And she was like, "I don't know, English." And I was like, "That sounds great. Sign me up." So I just didn't really know what I wanted to do. And I've always, like I said, I've always been creative minded. I've always enjoyed performing, no matter what it is. And I actually had a son around this time period. I'd had a son in 2007. And so I think it was a good hard look at when I came to this fork in the road. I sort of had this mentality that like, if I don't do this now, I'm never going to be able to do this. Like, this is like a last ditch effort to attempt to do something. And I think that was another reason why I was so focused on writing and doing it well and trying to be prepared for it, because I did have this idea. It wasn't just a hobby to me. I was very serious about it. And so I definitely had this notion that if I don't do it now, and if I don't make it happen really quickly, then I'm gonna be forced to teach or do whatever else. I'm gonna have to do something a little steadier. And so I think having Colby, who's my son, I think having him was a huge, kind of lit a fire under my ass sort of motivation for doing what I was doing.
So at this point, what happens? Are you're making the decision? What's going on surrounding that? Like, what are the opportunities? What are you actively doing at this point?
Just the normal stuff. I remember I had a website for myself very early on. By the time I was emceeing at Zanies, I was getting a professional website done. Like, I had a website where I was like swinging on a mic cable through a cityscape, looking like some stand-up Spider-Man or something. And I just had this mentality that like the more professional that I looked, the more people would take me seriously. I felt a little silly doing those things as an MC and with no real credits to my name. I remember I had this whole booking press kit that I had built up, these folders that I would send out to clubs all over the country. I mean, I was sending them out to everybody, and I was lying about where I performed. That didn't have any credits at all. So I was making up like venues or doing like colleges that I'd done shows at that weren't really college shows as much as I'd performed in like a cafe or something on the college.
Gotcha.
I was doing stuff like that, but but people were, there was definitely a hustle to it, and people were, calling me back or emailing me back, and Zanies was a big helper because Zanies is such a room as far as comedy clubs go. I don't know if you guys know, but an A room is somewhere that books like celebrities for their acts. Mm-hmm. And so the fact that I was opening up at Zanies had these, B rooms being like, oh, well, if he's opening at Zanies, he must be able to feature, or he might even be able to headline, and things like that. And so they would ask me, and I remember almost as soon as I was emceeing at Zanies, there was a smaller club in Jackson, Tennessee called South Street. I don't know if you remember South Street, but so Harvey, the guy who ran South Street, actually messaged me and was like, well, if you're emceeing at Zanies, you want to come feature here? And I was like, yeah. And he was like, you got 30 minutes? And I was like, heck yeah, I do. I had like 8 minutes. And so I was just writing like just a demon, just pulling out all the stuff that I could pull out to make that work. And yeah, when I look back and think about where I am now and how I got here, I had some big old gigantic balls, because there's no way I would have done that stuff now.
What are some, when you were at Zanies and had that opportunity, what are some of the experiences that stand out in your mind about that time period?
Experiences how? Like, what do you mean?
Like some of the things that you look back and maybe remember of, oh, that was kind of how I learned that lesson, or that was interesting to see that person do that, and I kind of took that into what I was doing.
Yeah, I mean, I was watching everybody that I opened up for. I was watching their shows and watching people respond to them and trying. There was a lot of, I don't think people realize how much audience psychology there is,
mm-hmm.
To stand up. And same with like when I was doing the pro wrestling thing. I mean, I was, there was a time I was working as a quote unquote bad guy, and there's a lot of freedom in being able to actively pursue an audience hating you. When you can kind of like, that's the goal, is that like being booed is as good as being cheered. There's a freedom in that. And I think the same thing applied to stand up. I think that if confidence sells everything. And so that was the big key that I was watching a lot of these successful stand-ups going up there, is that like, if you know that you're funny, people will just buy into it.
Mm-hmm.
People, and a lot of them weren't that funny, or they weren't great joke writers or whatever, but they had a very confident personality to get across that message, and people just, people buy into it, because people don't want to be like, well, I don't want to be the odd one out that thinks this guy's not funny. He clearly is doing the thing. So it was just watching people. It's just watching other comedians. I don't want to name certain names as far as like who I thought was funny and not funny,
sure,
but it was just watching the similarities between all of them and what it was that sold the audience and made them buy into them. I think that was, I was just I feel like a student for a long time. I was just very just diligent about sitting down and watching everybody and just kind of soaking up like the tricks, like paying attention. Once you decide you want to be a magician, you're watching to see how they're pulling the tricks off, and it's no different with stand up and with wrestling and all those things.
I love that comparison you made. So going back to what you said about being okay with being booed, I think people that have never done stand-up often find it surprising that for many comics, the groans, I guess, is the best way to say it. When people are groaning, it's almost as good, or if not better, than when people are laughing. Have you found that to be the case?
I love that. I love that in stand-up. I've never heard anybody else use this phrase, but I have this thing that I would call the redeemer, which was a joke where I would intentionally try to make an audience groan, but then I would try to hit them with something funnier right afterwards to make them feel stupid for groaning, because it's a funny idea. And those were some of my favorite jokes to write. Definitely. Any kind of reaction is a good reaction. What you don't want is just complete, you just don't want people not caring one way or the other, good or bad. As long as they're invested, it's fine. So that was the biggest thing. The biggest enemy for stand-up comedy is indifference. Just people just kind of sitting on their hands, not feeling anything.
So marriage and stand-up have that in common.
So what is it like now? I mean, I hate to kind of jump to now too quickly, but what is it like now when you're having to produce these shows that you don't really get that audience, that direct audience kind of feedback?
Yeah, it's strange. I've been doing these shows now for maybe like 2 years, I think, where I've been kind of producing them in a studio, and you kind of have to wait. You have to wait for the feedback until it's online. But, one thing that's different about, like, I do something very similar structurally compared to like the Daily Show or Weekend Update and all of these sorts of late night things, but they also have a live audience there for them, which I never have. So I find it really funny because now with the pandemic, everybody's recording their shows from home, and you can kind of see how awkward it is when people are making jokes and there's no audience to laugh at them. And I'm just like, these guys, a bunch of amateurs. I've been doing this for years now. I do miss when I don't do stand up and I do these shows. I do miss the immediate reaction. But you also know once it goes online based on the comments and everything, and you can just kind of tell what's working and what's not working, and that's also gratifying. So they're different. But I've always been a stand-up that trusts my gut when it comes to like a joke, and I don't always need the audience to tell me if I think something's funny or not. So, but I do miss it. I do miss that immediate gratification right now. I haven't done stand-up since New Year's Eve, and so partially because of this pandemic going on, I had some shows planned that we've obviously had to cancel, and I don't think my next show's booked right now, or that haven't been canceled until like August, and so time will tell if we're still going to do that. Yeah.
Well, you're also a musician and songwriter. When did you get into that? Was that something you started as a kid?
No. Well, like I said, I used to do the talent shows. I've always liked singing and doing those sorts of things, but I couldn't play an instrument at all. I used to rely on other friends to play guitar or piano with me to do those things. But I started playing guitar my freshman year of college, and I just kind of taught myself. And I'm a terrible guitar player. I just can do enough to get by, like open chords, and it's not good. I would never suggest anyone listen to me just my guitar playing ability. But yeah, that's when I started, was when I was a freshman in college.
And so I'm curious, how did you go from the feature performances to getting the headlining? Is this all the same time period?
Yeah, a lot of it would depend on. First off, I'll say that I took on featuring and headlining both times before I was really ready to. I was lying through my teeth when I would say that I was capable of doing that. But I think maybe every comedian does that. I think that you just don't know if you can fill the time until you fill the time, So, but yeah, they all kind of blend together because I'm not a well-known celebrity by any stretch of the imagination. So, I'm not gonna headline Zanies all week long because it's an A room, So I can headline there like a Wednesday or Sunday night, and then and then I'll feature there for the rest of the weekend. That would be kind of like a setup where I would say someone at my level would probably be. But meanwhile, there's other clubs that I could headline. There's other A rooms that I would do the same thing, where I would maybe headline an off night and then feature the rest of the week. So they all kind of blended together. So as my point is that I feel like there was no set stage where I was like, now I'm a feature, Now I'm a headliner. It would just depend on the club, to be honest, you know, and where I was at in my career.
It sounds like this is a day-to-day thing.
Yeah, yeah, it can be. I mean, like I said, I don't do it as much anymore because I've been doing so much work for comicbook.com. I do have the pleasure of picking and choosing some of the clubs that I like to go do. So most of the clubs that I do now are I don't feature really anymore, just because I don't have to pay my bills. I've got a steady income with comic book, and so I'll kind of just go out just to keep my stand-up legs sharp. You know, I'll go out and do that maybe every month or two was generally what I was trying to get out on the road. Was, you know, I'd go out for about a month, or not a month, but I'd go out like once a month and do a gig or something. Sometimes those would be college gigs. I still do a lot of college gigs. And then sometimes there's a few clubs that I would go to where I can do my dirtier material.
So do you have an agent at this point?
Yeah, I've got some acting. I've got an acting agent. I've got some college agents. Yeah, I do have people that do some work for me. Sorry, I hit my laptop there. But mostly, like I said, I've had to turn down a lot of stuff just for time. I don't have a lot of time. Running a daily show for comic book is that's a lot of work. People don't realize how difficult it is to maybe write a daily monologue, and that can be quite time consuming. There's a reason why people on, you know, those hosts on those late night shows have like 10 writers.
Sure.
Yeah, it can be taxing. So I don't have any writers. It's all me, good and bad.
I would imagine it's the writing, but also the research that has to go into it, right? You're having to consume a lot of information to be able to write those things.
Absolutely. Yeah. And my whole process is I just go, for the last 24 hours, I just go down comic book's Twitter feed and pick out the stories that seem to get the most engagement. And then I'll pluck those stories and turn a show out of them, you know, I make fun of them.
So how did the opportunity come about to work with comicbook.com?
I auditioned for it, actually. Yeah, my acting agent got me the audition. She knew that I collected comic books and all kinds of nerdy stuff like that. And so she, about 3 years ago, I started doing some commercial work for her. And then she said she had heard about this website, was looking for a host. And at the time, it was just a host, like an internet watch along thing for, I want to say it was Gotham. I don't know if you remember that show. But yeah, I think it was for Gotham. And then I auditioned for it, and they brought me on, and then had me we ended up doing a whole bunch of work together. So that's kind of essentially how it happened, was I just auditioned for it.
So you had this dream of being a pro wrestler, and now have shifted into this. Is this kind of new dream? Like, do you feel like you've found something that resonates with you?
Yeah, I think so. I think that being confined to the nerd space that I am, which is it's mostly just pop culture stuff and comic book stuff, confines me a little bit. I wish I had a little bit more freedom, because you know, sometimes my sense of humor has to be watered down. But I understand why. And so I definitely work within those confinements, but yeah, I feel like it's something that I'm good at, and I'm aware that like not everybody can pull it off the way that I pull it off. And so I feel a sense of job security in that way, you know, and like I said, you know, this pandemic has proved to be a perfect example of how, you know, luckily I've been able to keep working and keep pushing out content while, you know, so many people haven't been able to do things like that. And so I'm very blessed in that way. And so I definitely have reached a newfound perspective, I guess, for what I do, because before, stand-up comedy always seemed like the fallback plan. Like I was like, oh, if I stop working at comic book, I'll always have stand-up comedy. Like I can always go do shows. But now that's changed. And who would have ever thought that was going to be a thing that we were going to be faced with? You know, who would have ever thought that like crowds can't get together? Yeah. So I never saw stand-up being the thing that I would lose. I always saw that as you know, in the last 6 or 7 years of my life, I've considered that to be my fallback plan, and it's not the case, which is insane. So I've grown a newfound appreciation for what I do through comic book, for sure.
And so I know some of your earlier work, you've gone from, at least one example, doing parodies of Star Wars to interviewing celebrities on the red carpet.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about how you processed that, what it's been like going from one to the other?
Well, I think that I think I'm still doing all of those things. I'm a little bit of an everyman when it comes to comic book. When I have sketch ideas that I want to do, they're usually game to let me do them. And then so when I'm not doing these daily shows, well, I'm always doing the daily shows. Even when I go out on the road, I'm doing the daily shows because they're, you know, we have a puppet that looks like me that I'll still voice record the whole show and write the show and everything, and then they'll do the puppet in the studio and just go on like business as usual. Like, it's just nothing's changed. It's funny, and it's funny how many people in the comments don't even bat an eye at it. They're just like, I would have thought more people would have been like, there's a freaking puppet right here. Nope, they don't. They just love the news. But yeah, so I was going out on the road, and I would either do like movie set visits. Like, I was in Australia for Mortal Kombat. I was in London for a few things. So I would either do movie set visits, or I would do red carpets, or I would do junkets where I would get an opportunity to talk to some of the actors about the movies that they're in. And yeah, it's all of it's been fun. There's a wide range of things I can do under the comic book umbrella.
You shared a picture with us.
Oh yeah.
I'm going to go ahead and pull up this slideshow. Can you tell us what was going on with this pic? And,
oh yeah, pin in the cap right there. That was great. I got a chance to talk to Jim Carrey for Sonic the Hedgehog, and I was in LA for the junket, and I talked to the whole cast. I mean, I talked to Ben Schwartz, who he's fantastic, and but Jim was not initially going to be talking to anybody. Like, we didn't think that we were going to get him. And then that morning that I was there, they were like, no, Jim's going to talk to a couple of people. You guys have ran a lot of positive Sonic news for us. So, you know, we're going to let you talk to Jim. And I got like 5 minutes to talk to him. And such a cool dude. I mean, you know, being a comedian, he's like, I mean, you can't reach a bigger height than what Jim Carrey has. And so being able to just hang out with him for a few minutes was a really cool experience. That's something that, and I made him laugh. So now, no matter how many people tell me I'm not funny, I'm going to be like, I made Jim Carrey laugh, so you can just suck it. I don't know.
That's awesome. And so your specific question was, how many people try to talk to you with your ass, right?
Oh yeah, well, there's a few good questions in there, but yeah, that was one of them. And he said that there was not as many as you might have thought. And then I was like, well, I wish I'd started the whole interview off this way then. I thought that was going to be something that you'd been sick of by now.
What stand out as some of your biggest successes along your way and your biggest failures?
Man, that's actually kind of a tough question, because I don't think I sit down to think about it a whole lot. I don't really believe in failures per se.
Mm-hmm.
I don't look at it that way. I think that when things haven't gone my way, I just assume that that's because there's something better around the corner. You know, if something didn't go the way that I wanted it to, I just either wasn't ready for it or it wasn't in the cards for me. But I never look at it as a failure, because I definitely, you know, put it out there in the universe, and whether or not it came back to me or not is not up to me. But so I try not to look at things as like that. Success wise, I mean, just the fact that I'm here and I'm making a living, you know, doing the things that I'm getting to do. You know, before the pandemic, the fact that I was getting to make strangers laugh or talk to people like Jim Carrey, all that is a success to me. I mean, so I've gotten to I've made enough money that I could take my son to Universal Studios for vacations, or we can go wherever we want at any time, and that's a success to me. So I don't know. It's hard for me to grade it on a particular level, but just the fact that I've been able to do this and make a living, it has been huge. We just built a house. I mean, I just built this house on making strangers laugh. So. Which is insane to me. It's crazy that and it took a long time, but here we are. And so I don't think I'm ever going to consider myself not a success. And I try not to look at it in the framework of like, could I have been bigger, or could I have pushed it harder or gone farther? I just don't. I don't looking at it that way doesn't really appeal to me at all. And so I think that's a little bit of a negative. I think that's dangerous territory to get into, mentally. So I try not to look at it that way and think about like what I consider failures, I guess. I don't know if this is a on the spot answer. So I don't
No, that was a great answer. It was a great answer. Aligns with a lot of things we know about kind of resilience, and it's tied to optimism and really having that outlook on things.
It 100% is. I mean, I've got so many stories of people who've asked me, like aspiring stand-up comics have asked me like how I got to this point, and I don't have an answer for them other than like, don't take no for an answer. Like that's all you can do. Like I remember, I don't want to name names, but even when I started out, I was emceeing, or I was featuring at a club, and this comic asked me like, what can I do to get into that club? And I was like, I don't know, the usual stuff. Email them, be relentless about it, bug them, I don't know. And he kind of kept bugging me about it, and so I was like, okay, well, let me talk to him, I'll see what I can do. And so I talked to the owner of the club and said, I got this friend back in Nashville who wants to come in and show you what they got. And so she was like, well, I can MC them if you want, and I don't have a place for them to stay, but it's like $50 a show, and they can do that if they want. And I was like, okay. And so I told them, and they were like, well, that's all it pays. And I'm like, what do you mean that's all it pays? like, you know what I mean? Like you're not doing anything right now. And so that to me was like a big difference between me and that person, and why that person's not doing anything now, versus like why I am. It's just kind of like, you just have to like always be forging ahead and pushing yourself forward, and not taking no for an answer, and not stopping for those. There was definitely a time when I would have done it all for free if somebody was giving me stage time and giving me opportunity. So I don't know. I don't know. I don't know how to answer those questions. I think there's a relentlessness to successful people that you have ingrained in you, or you don't. And I'm not trying to say that I'm super successful, but just like I said, just the fact that I've been able to pay my bills doing this, to me, is a success, because there's so many people out there who wish that they were doing that sort of thing, and they can't. They don't know why they can't, but they can't. And I think it is tied to a lot of relentless optimism.
I definitely would categorize you as a success story, and I should have taken that $50 gig. I'm sorry about that. So now just lost my train of thought. Lauren, what was your question?
So, I mean, you talked about the relentless optimism piece. What do you think are some other, or I should say, do you think there are other kind of keys to your success?
Yeah, it was kind of like I mentioned earlier. I mean, I don't want to take away from how much good luck has with it. Perfect example is the opportunity at Zany's the first night that I was there. When I said that I didn't realize how lucky I was at the time was true, because it was only after the fact that I started emceeing there every week for a year that I realized Brian is never there. He's never there. He would have never been there to see me otherwise. So the fact that he was there on that night, and not only just there, but when he is there, he's in the green room just hanging out. He's not watching the show. So the fact that he was there that night, and just happened to be out in the showroom watching the show and could see that, I had something, at least the capability to MC or whatever. And then he asked me to do that. That was huge, just huge luck, And I don't want to give away like I don't want to undersell just how much luck I think has a part in people's success as well. But other than that, well, who was it? Was it what's the phrase? I think it was Oprah that said it's like opportunity meets preparation or something like that. Is that's kind of it. I mean, it's just being ready for some sort of moment to strike, and all in the meantime be working towards that, and when that opportunity presents itself, you don't choke and you're ready for it.
It's interesting. There's a saying in the music business, if you want to perturb an artist or a musician, get them a gig. And I think it's a little bit what you're saying, because if it's not paying enough, if it's not convenient, only those who are willing to do it for free basically are going to take some of those offers. So I think it's the same.
I mean, you reach a point where I'm blessed enough now that if somebody was like, hey, I got a show that I'll pay you $100 to do, and it's 500 miles away, there's a time I'd have been all over that. Now I can't, just because of time, because I am being paid in other areas that like that money's not worth my time anymore.
Exactly.
But before I would have been all over something like that, easy. And I still would be today if it wasn't for, just the lack of time that I have available, so that's really what that boils down to. I mean, it's just like, there's definitely like a heart and a hunger to it. I don't want to make it sound like I'm trying to present it as some sort of Rocky movie, but but it is, you want it so bad that you're willing to take any amount to do it, or you don't. And I think that those people get weeded out pretty quickly, at least that's been my experience.
Sure. What have you learned about yourself throughout this journey?
Man, what have I learned about myself? Well, that I'm a what's some ways to put this? I'm a lot more stable than other stand-up comics. I'm not as crazy as I thought I was, but also I don't know that I always realized how optimistic I am, but I am an optimistic person, and I do feel like when push comes to shove that I'm capable of doing anything that I put my mind to. And I definitely believe that now. I don't know that I always was cognizant of that fact, but I am now. I think that there's nothing that if I want to do something, I can get it done.
And what advice would you give an aspiring stand-up comedian?
First, it would be to not listen to anyone's advice. But if you have to listen to anyone's advice, like I said, don't take no for an answer. A lot of it is just pure. It's just being passionate, and it's being. It's just believing in yourself. It really is, and it's so weird because I've seen open micers that like they don't have the ability, that like they won't ever get beyond that, right? And it's such a weird. There were periods in my life where I was like, am I this person? Am I this? Like I see these guys where they're not going to go anywhere, and am I that guy? Am I just some hopeless dreamer that like? But I think it boils back down to the work ethic. I mean, there are people that want it, but they're not willing to put the work in to do it. And then there's people that are willing to put the work in maybe to do it, but they just don't want it as bad as maybe they thought they did. I know some really, really funny people that they're brilliant stand-up comics, but they, at the end of the day, they wanted to stay home. They wanted to be married. They wanted, they didn't want to be on the road. They didn't want those things. And so, it's kind of the right mixture of the two that you really need to pursue these things. And I don't know. I don't remember what the original question was, but that's the tangent I went off on.
You answered it. Go
Sorry,
ahead.
it sounds like you also, maybe without realizing it early on, had a lot of, like you said, opportunity to build up that confidence, to get comfortable with, how people reacted and all those
Well,
things.
like I said, I was in my underwear in front of a lot of people, and I didn't have a great body, so there was definitely a little bit of just blind passion that I was like, looking back on it, I'm like, man, hope this is not on YouTube.
So you had mentioned some of the performers or comedians not wanting to make that sacrifice. Do you feel that you've made sacrifices, and if so, what are they?
Yeah, I was really lucky in the sense that like me and my son's mom never stayed together. Like we were apart when he was born. And so I was kind of lucky in the sense that I didn't have him 24/7. So when I would go out and do stand-up comedy, stand-up for me was a way to distract myself from having, not having, I guess, my son. And then, I would be gone for 3 or 4 days at a time. And then I would come home and I would have him for 2 or 3 days. And all that time I got to spend with him, right? But then he would go back to his mom's house and I would go back on the road. And I think that would have been tougher for me if her and I had been together. I think I can sympathize that I was blessed enough to have that opportunity because I didn't have him all the time, if that makes sense.
Mhm.
But if I had had him 24/7, I don't know that I would have been able to leave, So the fact that I didn't have him and I was just stuck at my house for, 4 days alone. Otherwise, weeks I didn't have gigs were so boring and so just I didn't have anything to do. So I definitely I didn't have to sacrifice as much because of the way the situation was laid out for me. So I didn't feel, but I did, I guess. So that's a perk. But then on the other hand, I did sacrifice a lot of friendships. I do feel like being out on the road as much as I was, and then also having when I was home, I would spend it with my son. I did sacrifice, a lot of friendships. I feel like that I'm somebody who I get along with everybody, and I care about all of my friends, but I'm not somebody that has like this big tight circle of people, around all the time. Like I'm definitely a bit of a stay at home kind of loner, and I go out, like when we could go out, I would go out maybe, and meet people like once a month or something and go out. But otherwise I'm not, I didn't, I've seen a lot of friends go on and they get married and have their lives. And I've missed funerals. My uncle died and I was in London this past year. I couldn't be at his funeral, things like that. Those are sacrifices that I had to make. And sometimes sacrifices that make me feel kind of terrible, to be honest. It makes me feel like I was picking my career over maybe people that I cared about. And I hate that I was put in a position or even put myself in a position to have to do that. But at the end of the day, there's nothing I could have done to really control it. And so I just try not to beat myself up too bad about those sacrifices and just feel like that's the name of the game.
So you mentioned, excuse me, earlier that you might have exaggerated some of your like performances you did at the cafe instead of the auditorium at the university, for example.
Right.
Was there a moment you ever felt you were faking it or that you were a fraud?
Oh, I still feel like that. I still feel like I'm about to be outed any time. I don't know that that's and I've heard, that a lot of people feel that way, that the whole fake it till you make it thing is a real thing. And yeah, I still to this day have these like nightmares of just, someone's going to call me out and take this all away from me. And it's just going to be as simple as like, is everyone taking crazy pills? Why do you like this guy? And everybody's going to be like, you're right. I don't know. What? Somebody stop paying him to do that. And it's going to be that simple. I still feel on some level like I'm going to be out of this, just some talentless hack that never deserved to get any of the never have any of the success that I've had. And yeah, that still scares me. And I realize on a surface level that it's highly unrealistic, but it's a fear that's ingrained in there.
When that does come up or your mind goes there, how do you handle that?
It's the optimism. It's pushing through with that optimism, and just telling myself that there's two sides of me, and one side of me is a jerk who likes to bring me down, and I gotta keep that guy, at bay. I gotta stand over that guy and tell him to shut up.
So,
you're not alone in that, by the way. We all have those two people in our heads.
Yeah, I know.
So one of the areas, the work that we've spent almost 2 decades doing is on studying expertise. And part of that debate is how much of something that one is capable of, how much of that is due to natural ability, how much of that is due to development or nurture, as it's often called. And so there's two extremes, obviously, and then there's everything else in the middle. Thinking about your path, or I guess in general, if you don't want to attribute it to you, but in general, how much success would you attribute to the natural part of it or being born with it, and how much would you attribute to working hard or the nurture part of it?
I would probably just go ahead and evenly split it up about like 1/4 luck, 1/4 talent, 1/4, how I was brought up and maybe like being ignored by my dad. and then 1/4 whatever else you want to attribute success to, work ethic or whatever. I would say that it gets split up pretty evenly there, because I'm aware of some very fragile instances throughout my career that things could have diverted wildly, or where things did divert wildly. I mean, just my first time doing stand-up and all of the stars that aligned for me to start doing this as a career was when I look back on it, is kind of astounding. And my life could have been so much different, from that point forward, if it'd gone a different way. And I don't know where it would have gone, but yeah, I think all of those things, you just throw them in a bowl and mix them up, and that's what you come out with. But yeah, I don't know. I have no clue, but that's my guess.
Anything that we haven't asked that you feel is important to share with the listeners?
No, I think by now you guys have probably decided if I'm a loony person or not, and, and if I deserve any of this.
So what is the biggest takeaway from your story?
You just, I don't know, just keep at it, like if you really want something, just go for it. And it doesn't matter if it involves you standing in your underwear in front of a bunch of people. Just do the thing. Just do it. And know that, I mean, it's a little cliche to be like, at least you tried, but it really is that. I mean, I think that I have more regret over the things that I've not done versus the things that I tried to do and it didn't work out the way I wanted it to work out. So that would be it for me. Is just just do it. Whatever it is that you want to do, just go for it, and don't let anybody tell you no.
Well,
Lauren, do you have any other questions?
No, that's awesome. I loved, hearing your viewpoints on the last couple of things, and just how you kind of see, not only your journey, but the power of optimism and those types of things. It's been great to listen to you.
Good. Thank you guys for having me. I really appreciate it.
Chris, thank you so much for being here. We appreciate you taking the time, and I hope all the listeners will check him out at comicbook.com and see what you got.
Yeah, it's fun. I mean, don't bother if you don't like nerdy stuff. There's some deep dives, but otherwise, if you like, if you like comic books and Marvel and DC movies and Game of Thrones and all that pop culture-y kind of stuff, I mean, then yeah, come hang out and watch me make fun of it.
Awesome. Thanks again.
Thank you, guys.
The Path Distilled is hosted by Kevin Harris and Lauren Tashman, created and produced by Kevin Harris. The content is copyrighted by The Path Distilled, all rights reserved.